Hello, this is Jay Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have Pentagon says deploying Marines and National Guard to LA protest is costing $134 million from APnews.com, posted by Donald Key, and that's a cross post from the centrist subreddit. And yeah, it just goes to show you how, a lot of Republicans claim they're fiscally responsible, but, they're just going to spend like there's no tomorrow, just like the Democrats will. And, yeah, personally, I do think the riots have to be quelled somehow in Los Angeles, but, I think sending the National Guard and Marines is a bit much. I would rather, the local police try and quell them, but, ultimately, if they get that bad and they have to justify sending in the National Guard and the Marines, that's on them. The state can justify sending in whatever use of force it wants to, and there's nothing you can do about it. I personally think, it shouldn't have even got this far. I think Gavin Newsom should have called up the National Guard of his state rather than Donald Trump. But, Gavin Newsom just wants to cry and say Trump's a fascist, and he wants the riots or protests or whatever you're going to call them to continue for as long as possible since, they're in group code rather than out group code, and he's clearly using them as a way to advance his presidential ambitions. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Of course, this subreddit would never call out Gavin Newsom. It only cares about who people with an R next to their name, especially the Orange Man, because a lot of people will just view politics as that. It's either you're in the red gang or the blue gang. Neither gang is that good for you, I would say. But ultimately, that's how a lot of people think of politics in a binary way like that. Even though I would say they both screw you over in their own ways. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump won't allow peaceful protesting, posted by CH4Locks, and that's a cross post from the Defeat Project 2025 subreddit. And it's a link from a picture from theguardian.com live feed. Trump says anyone who protests at Saturday's military parade will be met with very heavy force. Donald Trump warned people against protesting this weekend's military parade in Washington celebrate the U.S. Army's 250th anniversary. For those people that want to protest, they're going to meet a very big force, Trump told reporters in the Oval Office. I haven't even heard about a protest, but this is people that hate our country, but they will be met with very heavy force. Law enforcement agencies are preparing for hundreds of thousands of people to attend Saturday's parade. Secret Service Special Agent is in charge, Matt McCool, his real name, said yesterday, according to Reuters. McCool said thousands of agents, officers, and specialists will be deployed from law enforcement agencies from across the country. The FBI and the Metropolitan Police Department have said there are no credible threats to the event. And my thoughts on that are, I personally think you should be able to protest at whatever event you want to. But with that being said, the state, if they want to clamp down on protests, they have monopoly on legal use of force to justify doing whatever they want to. A lot of people who said, a lot of progressives right now, they're all about freedom of assembly, but back during COVID, they thought freedom of assembly was the worst thing ever. So, it's both sides, people will be against freedom of assembly if the narrative says to be against freedom of assembly. The libertarian position is to realize that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights don't have any pandemic exemptions. So, justify doing whatever you want to, but that doesn't mean the state can't justify using its force against you for any reason it feels like. Then we have laws. We have to go by the laws. This aged horribly, posted by Donald Key, and that's a cross post from the No Shit Sherlock subreddit. We have laws. We have to go by the laws. Dictator Johnny on deploying National Guard states in 2020, and they said we can't call on National Guard unless we're requested by a governor. But now he's doing it anyway, and that just goes to show you a lot of politicians are, they'll say one thing and then they do the opposite. People always say, "Oh, Donald Trump's the worst at that," but they're all pretty bad at it, I would say. But Reddit, it's just all about the circle jerk about the Orange Man at this point. He came down to go on an escalator 10 years ago on Monday, and ever since then, it's just been Orange Man bad, Orange Man bad, Orange Man bad, constantly on Reddit without any stop pretty much, and you eventually just get tired of it all. But yeah, if everyone wants to call out Trump for saying, going back on his word, they should be able to, but they would never call out a Democrat politician for doing the same thing. And that's pretty much all of Reddit these days, just a progressive shit-lib circle jerk. And if you dare say it at all, you're going to get either mass downvoted or outright censored, and that's not something I particularly care for. But, I have to keep on fighting on it because, if they, I'm not fighting on it, the sooner it gets even worse. People think a lot of social media are very bad circle jerks these days, but Reddit somehow even the worst of them all. The downvote system, any wrong think is downvoted or outright censored, and only correct think is upvoted, and it's also botted to hell and back. So yeah, I personally don't really care for it, but ultimately you need to keep fighting for libertarian causes, even if it's on a platform that is frankly very antithetical to them. Even if it used to be a very pro-libertarian platform around 2012ish as well. Then we have "What if we all voted Republican?" posted by Skeptical Mama, and they said, "So don't throw rocks at me. I hate Democrats. Also responsible for what I've been going on. But damn, I live in a very red state. I vote independent, but I don't get to vote in the primaries. I've never been strategic about my voting. I just vote for the person I think is the best for the country. If we all changed our party and voted Republican, couldn't we vote out the douchebags who are on their knees rather than representing the people that elected them? Why or why not? Let's hear it." And yeah, personally, I personally think the Republican Party, just like the Democratic Party, is kind of beyond reform at this point. There are some good Republicans like Thomas Massey or Rand Paul, but those are few and far between. And the Republicans, they might say a lot of good stuff, but they'll just, like, the Democrats will say a lot of bad stuff and then just stab you in the front, while the Republicans will just say a lot of good stuff while campaigning and then stab you in the back when they're elected. So, neither party, I would say, is that good. But, if you want to justify voting for whoever you want to justify, that's on you. I personally just don't really care for either of them. And my one wish is I want to see at least one of them collapse in my lifetime. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have "Spread the Word, Protesters Stop Looters in LA During Protests," posted by Paton13, and that's a cross post from the Public Freakout subreddit. And yeah, of course Reddit's gonna always find headlines that make the in-group look positive and the out-group look bad. And of course, since the protests or riots, whatever you want to call them, protest riots, since they're, of course, the in-group, they're always gonna find headlines to make them look good. So yeah, this isn't too surprising. It's why social media is a lot of propaganda. It's pretty much the same thing every day. In-group good, out-group bad. And yeah, it gets tiring after a while, but it's why you gotta try and break up the circle jerk as much as possible. That's another reason I still use Reddit, I would say. You gotta break up the circle jerk, even if you're downvoted or censored for it. Then we have Trump's DNI drops ominous video warning warmongers are trying to spark nuclear war because they have bunkers, from Mediaite.com, posted by Dr. Who 07. And yeah, personally, I do think it always seems like World War III or Civil War II is imminent any day now, but they always never seem to happen. I wish we could just kind of get at least one of them over with, because it just seems like it's just constant building tension that never gets any payoff. And yeah, I personally don't really care for any war, but I just really want to get it over with at this point, I would say. And yeah, I'd personally be against either Civil War II or World War III broke out, but I just kind of want to get it over with at this point, since it seems like every day tension just gets higher and higher. But nothing ever happens, it seems. That's kind of the philosophy these days, because everyone's too busy on social media to actually do anything out in real life outside of a few circle jerking protests. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have LAPD officer shoots lone unarmed woman trying to get home, and that's posted by Adam1260, and that's a cross post to the Los Angeles subreddit. And yeah, as I said earlier, the state can justify using force whatever it wants to. Of course, Reddit is always gonna, if a protester or rioter, whatever you want to call them, beat up an unarmed guy just walking along the street, that wouldn't be trending on Reddit. But since this is the out group doing a bad thing, it's suddenly one of Reddit's favorite things. So that's Reddit for you. It's pretty much just DNC propaganda gobbledygook at this point. And I'm not gonna say RNC propaganda gobbledygook doesn't exist. There's a lot of it on X, but Reddit is definitely astroturfed by the DNC at this point. And we have an LAPD officer shoots a man in the groin at close range with a 40mm less lethal munition because he was annoyed about being asked his name and badge number, posted by Ragnar OKXP, and that's crossed from the Public Freakout subreddit. Pretty much the same as the last, my same reaction as the last post. Reddit only cares because it's a member of the out group doing a bad thing. If it was a member of the in group doing a bad thing, it'd be buried, downvoted, and censored. And we published real photos of troops sleeping on the floor in LA. Right-wing critics called them fake. From sfchronicle.com, posted by Knee Concussions. And yeah, ultimately, just because, if they want to say the photos are real, that's fine, but increasingly you have AI and that kind of complicates things. Ultimately believe whatever photos are real that you want to. If the San Francisco Chronicle wants to say they're real, I think they probably do look kind of real. But if you want to say they're AI as well, just by saying whatever you want to, everyone's just trying to manipulate the narrative these days, whether it be through AI or misrepresenting videos of the protest, like doing a video from like 2020 and saying it's a current video. But yeah, that's life for you. People are always going to try and push their agenda on you, and social media is a good example of that. And let's see if there's anything new. So it looks like there's nothing new, so I think we're going to wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.